Welcome to The Lock Shop with Nielson and Hustler, powered by Coolbet Canada.
Well, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to The Lock Shop. Huss, what's up, my man? How you doing, buddy?
Dude, it is great to have you back. It feels like this is the first time we've done a show together in...
It's almost a month, man.
Literally ages.
It's almost a month.
Did have the chance to see and talk to you from about 12 feet outdoors in Vancouver before you holed up again for a few days, and then for a couple seconds in the press box there while you're doing the game. But it's good to have the boys back together again. Hey, we should give a big shout out to Pat and Jake because, man, have they been awesome jumping in while you've been on the shelf. Had so much fun, as we always do, doing the shows with them. But it is good to have the OGs back in the lock shop today. How are you feeling, and how have you made it over what was probably a very strange Grey Cup week for you?
Yeah, I was like the only person in the history of Grey Cup to go there and try to get healthy. Like, I saw a bunch of people on the flight back who just looked like ass. Like, the one guy came up to me. He's like, Dusty, I miss your old show. I was like, well, listen to the new one. And he sits down next to me and he just reeked of booze. Still, I was just like, legendary move, man. Like, I'm sitting there still kind of, I mean, I am better now than I was when I left for Grey Cup, but it still sucked. Like, I got in on Wednesday, was like, I'll pop down to the media party, met up with Sean White, had a couple drinks, walked down to the media party, had one beer there, and I was just like standing in the middle of the place coughing. I was like, not meant to be. Like, I'm out. So then I saw you when I was leaving, and then I was in my room like until kickoff. Like, I really didn't go around any other members of the media. I met a buddy from high school I hadn't seen in 20 years, went out for lunch with him, went out for lunch with one of my old roommates. And outside of that, I was just like in the room until game time. So it was weird Grey Cup. I mean, I don't even know if it was good, if it was a good festival. Was it a good festival? Like, yeah.
That's why it really sucks for you, because that was the best Grey Cup I think I've ever been.
Really? No way.
God, dude.
It makes me even angrier.
It was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, a huge props to everyone at the Lions and the BC Grey Cup Festival. I mean, that area where I saw you, I mean, with the convention center the two sides of the convention center on both. You had the family fun zone and the fan experience where we were doing our shows on Thursday and Friday was buzzing. There was so much to do. I mean, if you had kids, you could have just had, like, if you brought Marsh and Elizabeth in there, they would have been lost for
really
hours. Oh, you can kick field goals.
That's the way it should be, man. That's great.
40s. No, it was great. And then the facility in the new part of the convention center for the team parties was, I mean, they were by far the biggest rooms in Grey Cup history. So you may have gone in and didn't think they were as packed or as bumping, but they certainly were. I mean, the Spirit of Edmonton I got into briefly, Ryderville for a bit. The Lions Den on the bottom floor was huge. And they had the Paul Tyson fight on Friday, the scam that it was, but everyone wanted to see it. The main events of the UFC on Saturday as well. And then at the top of the convention center, the Bombers took over with the Bomber House. And if you've ever been to that area, I mean, the entire upper level of it looks over onto the water. They had that crazy drone show on, I guess it was Friday night.
I saw highlights of it. Yes.
It was so good. And I mean, the game itself, like, that's the best stadium in Canada. And I don't think it's close. Albeit I haven't been, I mean, I guess the Rogers Center now has the potential of being like that. But I mean, they've basically turned it into a baseball stadium. I mean, last time the Grey Cup was there, they were doing it at BMO.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is the pinnacle, I think, of the country, and everything was world class, with maybe the exception of the Bombers' performance. The halftime show was absolutely outstanding. Like, everything they did, they nailed. You had fans from around the Canadian Football League, a lot of Winnipeg Blue Bomber fans there. It was, put it this way, it was 10 years since we've been in Vancouver for the Grey Cup. I certainly hope it's a much shorter wait to get back there, because the bar's been set very high for us in Winnipeg next year.
Yeah, the fact that they've been able to pull it off the way that they did, and to have a Mardoman there who will obviously be hungry to get it again, especially after the Lions let him down significantly this year. I'm sure we'll be back there by the end of the decade. I mean, that'll happen for sure, I would think. Nielsen and Huss with you. Great reaction in the chat to the return of me, I guess. I like this one from Anchor 22. Dusty, the rumors about my death have been greatly exaggerated. I got to be careful laughing, because I know as soon as I start laughing, I'm going to start coughing again. Somebody says Dusty looks like he's lost some lbs. Yeah, I'm like 16, 17 pounds down, buddy, in the last 3 weeks. It's just like I got no appetite. Like, I don't eat ever. I eat like once a day. It's crazy. So it's starting to feel a little bit better, though. So that's nice. My plan is to be back in the office on Thursday, hopefully, fingers crossed. So we'll see how the days go. Lots to get to in the lock shop today. We're going to stick with Grey Cup because we haven't talked about it yet. So we'll get to that. Then we're going to get to the NFL picture. Detroit Lions Super Bowl favorites for the first time in my life. Unbelievable. Had to be back today. And then we'll get to the NHL slate. Obviously, would have been pretty epic rant on the show this morning about the Oilers game last night from me. Anyway, Huss, what happened to the Bombers, man? Now we have to remember 1 point game going into the fourth quarter. The Kyrie Wilson penalty, I think, basically changed how that game was going to play out. Radio broadcast was great. Mike Benavides is an absolute stud. First time ever doing color. He was terrific. But the fourth quarter, just an implosion from the Bombers. I was stunned by it. I thought there was a path to victory for the Argos, even as almost 10-point dogs, but I did not see a path to what they ended up doing in that football game. So what happened in the fourth quarter, or what happened through the first three quarters to make it a 1 point game going into the fourth quarter?
Well, two things from my perspective. First off, the Bombers were at a D level offensively. They ran the football pretty well. I mean, a lot of people here, I'm like, how do you only give it to Brady Oliveira 9 times until late into the fourth quarter when he had 80 yards? I mean, Brady had a 17-yarder on his fifth carry that doubled his total. I mean, I think he had 17 yards on his first 4 carries. And then he had that one big 35-yarder that was like the biggest play of the game outside of maybe that pass to Ontario Wilson early on. It came down to Zach Collaros and the Bombers' offense's ability to complete passes and move the chains. Like, when Zach came back into the game in the fourth quarter, he had 6 completions. Like,
yeah, what was he, 6 for 15 or something like that?
6 for 16 at that point. Okay. And, whatever, added to the numbers kind of in garbage time after those picks had gone in. But listen, the offense wasn't right. Credit to the Toronto defense. I mean, they obviously give that Winnipeg offense fits. It's happened 3 times now this season, twice in the regular season and once in the playoffs. But they never got into any sort of a groove whatsoever outside of that one drive where they got the touchdown, to put them up 7-3, and then that field goal when they actually had the 7-point lead. The time of possession was so dominated by the Argos.
It was like 33-18 at one point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the Bombers had it quite a bit at the end, which made it look a little bit better. But it was dominated by the Argos, and a lot of that is on the Bomber offense. I mean, as I mentioned, okay, great, you hand it off to Brady, and you got a 2nd and 4 or a 2nd and 3, and you can't complete short, simple passes. And boom, you're back on the field. Like, think about this, man. So at the end of the first half, after the Bombers gave up that field goal to make it 10-9 for Winnipeg, they got the football, they took a knee, and they went in for halftime. If you back up to the first pick that Zach Collaros threw when it was 10-6, through the third quarter, it probably was in real time about an hour and a half of time, and the Bombers ran 2 offensive plays.
Oh boy.
Like the Argos got the ball out of the halftime. They drove down. They probably took another 5-6 minutes off the clock. Winnipeg got the ball back 2 and out. And then the Argos did that again. And I mean, that was huge. Their inability. And listen, a lot of this, you put it on your defense to get off the field. They didn't get to Nick Arbuckle well enough. I mean, Willie Jefferson had a monster game, but that was basically it.
Willie Jefferson was great. Would have been the MVP undoubtedly.
Oh, for sure.
Game, yeah.
And then, I mean, the secondary, Dietrich Nichols had his worst game of the season, I thought. They just weren't able to either pressure Arbuckle quick enough to make him throw the football. And normally when the Bombers are just rushing 3 and pull it back, the guys aren't as open as they were. And listen, Arbuckle played his ass off.
He did.
I mean, he stepped up in the occasion. And listen, I had plenty of conversations on Winnipeg Sports Talk on, okay, Strevler's out. Like, what happens if Zach Collaros gets hurt in the playoffs?
I heard you. I listened to you and Marshall yesterday. I know you guys brought that up. It was a good conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, that was at a time where Hamilton was out. Like, can you get a bow in there? Can just for some legitimate insurance, or what would have been nice, a second option, because they didn't have that. I mean, when Wilson came in, I mean, the first thing he did was throw a floater up that should have by all rights been picked. They were lucky to get those 3 points on that drive. So, I mean, incredibly frustrating from a Winnipeg perspective. I mean, that game was absolutely there for the taking. They got out to a half-decent start. They were up 10-3, and then the offense was in quicksand, and Nick Arbuckle and the Argos started to move the football, started to get confidence, and when you own the clock the way that they did, you have to make the most of those opportunities when you get the football, and Winnipeg didn't at all. And then obviously Zach cutting his hand, coming back in. Like, I don't know. You were in the main press box, I guess?
I don't know. I was actually further down. I was on about the 35-yard line right next to Amar Doman's suite. So I wasn't in the usual press box. We were over a bit.
Okay. But I mean, we were sort of in the corner there.
Yeah.
Like where I saw you. And, it just felt like the field was basically slanted towards the Argos pretty much the entire time. But when Zach came back out with the glove on, he was right in front of us. I was sitting there with Dunk and with Remus, and we're watching Zach throw the football. And everyone that came out was kind of fluttering like this. And Dinwiddie spoke to it afterwards in the room saying, well, we saw him. We knew that he couldn't throw properly. So we were just going to back it off.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, the first thing that they did was rip one 40 yards down. They got picked off, and that was basically the game. I mean, incredibly frustrating for a team that has just done so much. And it's like losing these last 3 games has almost made people forget about the back-to-back championships they won before.
It's true. Yeah.
And it's made the winning the West 5 straight years, which by any standard is incredible, as almost a dubious stat, which it shouldn't be. But it sort of is right now. And then, of course, I mean, we've got the Grey Cup here in Winnipeg next year, a massive year for the Bombers. I know they're doing garbage bag day today.
Well, that's where I kind of wanted to go before we wrap up on the CFL House. I read Hammer's piece on how this one felt different than the last 2, right? Like everybody was stunned. And
yeah,
like, where do they go from here? Like, do they run it back with the core for the most? I know Biggie said he still wants to play. Like, how do they approach things, you think, this offseason? I know there's some thought that Buck might leave to go be the head coach of the Lions.
That'll be really interesting. I mean, I know, like, talking to Hammer and guys that are pretty tied in, I mean, like, depending on what happens with the Elks, like, are you hearing that Rick Campbell's probably going to be ending up in Edmonton? I mean, I've kind of heard a lot.
I'm pretty sure they're going to introduce Hervey as GM tomorrow. And I think Rick Campbell may be following. And it'll be interesting because if Buck Pierce is in the plans for Vancouver, I wonder if Jordan Maximic, who's an Edmonton guy and started here, comes with Rick Campbell to Edmonton, because Buck will probably be calling the plays, I would think, in Vancouver. So it'd kind of be redundant to also have Maximic there. So it's going to be a fun offseason. We'll see how it sorts out, but I'm intrigued by where this goes for the Bombers.
Well, listen, I mean, one thing that, that I had thrown out, and I had a great chat with Trey Ford, actually, in person at the convention center. He came on, and man, he was a fun guy to talk to.
He is. Yeah.
And he had a lot of energy for the game. Obviously his brother's in. So he said, hey, obviously I'm cheering for the Blue Bombers right now. And, he was clear. He'd like to play with his brother. Now, Tyrell had such a good season. I think there's a good chance that he ends up in back with another NFL.
Another crack at it. Yeah.
If that doesn't happen, Trey Ford, if someone's going to pay him starters money and say you're the starting quarterback of the football team, I think, he'll take it. He was pretty clear about that. That's what he wants. If that is not there, and I'm not completely convinced that a team is just going to be ready to hand him the keys right now to it. I have speculated that coming to Winnipeg and playing, in this Bomber culture with his brother, albeit for a while behind Zach Collaros, might be perfect for him to get ready to be the starting quarterback of the team moving forward. Because I think really next year is going to be somewhat of a passing of the torch, whether it happens during the season or whether it happens at the end of the season. The Bombers have to have that plan for post Zach Collaros.
It's got to be time to start getting ready for that. Yeah.
Ever since he came in 2019. So to me, what happens at the quarterback position? Zach was non-committal afterwards. He was still just stunned about what had happened. And I know wasn't going to get into future plans, but he's signed for next year. He's making a lot of money. I don't think that will be different, but I think in a lot of other areas, we're going to see an influx of younger players, of newer players, potentially other free agents from around the league who I think look at the opportunity in Winnipeg and, the way the players are treated as maybe the best place to go if you can get what you're looking for as far as a contract makes. But I think the next 2 years, there's going to be significant change with Winnipeg. The question is how much happens this offseason going into the Grey Cup here in Winnipeg and how much happens afterwards.
Yeah.
Because at some point, Big Hill and Collaros and Willie Jefferson, I mean, these guys are not going to be the leaders that they have been this entire time. But to me, the quarterback position particularly, and what happens post Zach, and to be honest, having a guy that you can actually put in confidently if Zach has another game like he did at a crucial time. Sure would have been nice to have that guy, especially when he hurt his hand.
Yeah, man. So I was, it's different when you're doing the radio call. We had a TV monitor, but, we don't have a producer feeding us information and stuff. And when Terry Wilson came on the field, I didn't know, I was not aware of anything that had happened to Zach. So I see Terry Wilson up there. I'm like, what? I'm looking on the sideline. Benny's like, I don't see him. I don't know where he is. And then our radio guy who was kind of helping us was just like, we believe he went to the room with a cut finger. I was like, oh my God, what are the odds? Willie takes this ball away. You got a chance to punch it in and you got to run Terry Wilson out there. So yeah, tough one. But overall, great Grey Cup experience. Arbuckle put together a story for the ages, getting an opportunity to start in the Grey Cup and ends up being the damn Grey Cup MVP. You'll never be able to take that away from him. The Argos have won 2 of the last 3 now. We'll see where this goes for them. But it should be a very interesting offseason that'll likely get started tomorrow here in Edmonton with the announcement likely of Ed Hervey to be the general manager of the Edmonton Elks. Dial it back a bit, Huss, and see how it works. See how it works this time for Herb. NFL last night. I didn't watch all of the Monday Nighter. I watched parts of the Monday Nighter. Joe Mixon, huge game. Houston's put together a pretty good run right now, Huss.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, they've been doing it, with many of their top players out. I mean, Nico Collins came back and was whatever. He had 4 catches for 54 yards. CJ Stroud was throwing it all over the field, but it was Joe Mixon that was getting in. Here's a question for you. Is the value of running backs higher than it's been at this point at any time, maybe in the last decade or so?
I think undoubtedly. Undoubtedly.
Derrick Henry has done in Baltimore. You look at Joe Mixon, who a lot of people had sort of written off on what he's doing in Houston. We know what's happened to the Niners without Christian McCaffrey this year. And even though he was back, I mean, a really, really tough loss to Seattle at home earlier this year. I think for so long we've been fed, the running backs don't matter creed of fantasy football. They do. They really do. Kareem Hunt's come in and made a huge difference to the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, scheme, blocking, all of that comes into effect. But, man, there are some veteran guys that I think a lot of people were wondering. And this is going to be very interesting to see. A guy like Najee Harris didn't get his 5th year picked up. He's having a strong season again. Like, what is the market for those guys moving forward? And, I mean, I guess from a fantasy conversation, I mean, this year, all the top picks outside of McCaffrey were receivers. How much does that change moving forward? But takeaways from Houston, they're not as bad as they looked in a couple of those games previously. They're in a terrible division, so they're in a really good spot. They should be a playoff team. They'll get a home playoff game. But I don't see them as a threat to any of the top 3 teams. Well, let's call it 4 teams. I mean, now that Pittsburgh beat Baltimore again and has a stranglehold in the AFC North, I think it does change the equation a little bit. And by the way, that is a Steelers Mike Tomlin win. No touchdowns. 16.
Sounds about right.
Not new. Take it from a Chiefs guy that remembers a playoff game between Kansas City and Pittsburgh where the Chiefs scored 2 touchdowns, the Steelers scored 0 touchdowns, and they lost 20-18 or 18-6. Might have been the same thing. It was 6 field goals. I think it was 6 field goals and a safety, actually, was what they did. But then is the Lions. I mean, that's the story right now. I mean, they are murdering teams, Dusty.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Jags, so I don't want to read into it too much, but they hung 52 on them and didn't allow anything.
They serve up a 50 burger every 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, man. It's I mean, they genuinely look like the best team in the National Football League right now, and I don't know how to handle it, to be honest with you. It's pretty amazing to see them as Super Bowl favorites and deserve it Super Bowl favorites right now with what they've done recently. So we'll see how that plays out. And you mentioned it in the AFC. You know, you're looking at Kansas City, you look at Buffalo, look at Baltimore, you look at Pittsburgh, throw them in there. You said Houston would kind of be a threat on the outside. Over in the NFC, it does not appear to be, as much of a push for the Detroit Lions as opposed to coming through a gauntlet that looks like it's going to be over on the other side.
Well, I'll put this to the chat right now. Let's do a little question to the chat. The Lions plus 185 to win the NFC. Who is the biggest threat to Detroit in the NFC? Here's the odds right now over at Coolbet. Philly is second at plus 350. The Niners are second at 6-1. They might not make the playoffs.
Yeah, why are the Niners still sitting at 6-1?
You know what? I think they feel that they'll get healthier. They'll get the guys back.
Yes, but
based on what they've done in the past, they're always capable of putting together a big one. You got the Packers at 9-1, the Vikings at 10-1, the Commanders at 16-1, Arizona leading their division 18-1, and then Atlanta at 22, Rams 28, Seattle at 33. You know me, my take on the Eagles. I'll take a number of teams ahead of the Eagles. The San Francisco 49ers have been very disappointing this season. I don't think they're going in a positive trajectory. I still maintain the top teams are in the NFC North. And I think it is Minnesota or more likely Green Bay as the biggest challenge. But I'll be honest, Dusty, since you have been on the DL.
Yeah, forever.
This conversation has changed in that we thought, okay, Detroit's the number one team, but like there's a gap right now.
Yeah.
It's Detroit and then everybody else. And you give them the 1 seed, you give them home field throughout the playoffs. I would never normally take a plus 185 favorite right now at this point in the season to win a conference.
It looks good though. It looks good. Yeah.
I'm kind of regretting I didn't do it earlier before people really kind of waited for the Chiefs to finally lose a game or something like that. Not that it has anything to do with the NFC, but to me, they are just so dangerous right now. They're clicking on all cylinders. I mean, obviously an injury or two could change up, but as currently constructed, the Lions are the beast of the NFC, and I can't even argue with the fact that they're the Super Bowl favorite right now.
Yeah, no, I think it's I was just looking at Super Bowl odds. Detroit's 4-1, Kansas City's 5-1, Buffalo's plus 650. I think those three teams are right where they need to be. Then you got the Eagles and Ravens at 8-1, and then there's the drop off down to the Niners, Packers, Steelers are in that group there as well. Even the Niners on the Super Bowl odds. It's funny. You got Detroit, Kansas City, and Buffalo in like kind of tier 1. Then the Eagles and Ravens. Then there's a drop from 8-1 with Baltimore down to 14-1 with San Francisco. And then there's a significant drop from the Niners all the way down to the Packers and Steelers at 22-1. So the Niners, I think unjustifiably, are in like this weird sort of spot all by themselves. I mean, at this stage, I'd still group them with the Packers and Steelers and Vikings, but the respect is still there for the Niners that maybe they figure it out at some point. What about the Dallas Cowboys coming out of last night, Huss? Winless at home this year. I mean, if they last this season, it's got to be a house cleaning at the end of the year. Like, holy smokes.
They should have done it. I mean, I guess I wasn't with you. I think I was in Kansas City last year and watched the Packers go into Dallas and absolutely torch the Cowboys, embarrass them on home field. They broke them. I mean, since that happened, they've been down 20 points or more in every home game. Dak's out for the season. Listen, if you want an update on the Cowboys, just start firing up your draft lottery simulator and start looking at a lot of mock drafts. I mean, that's the future for Cowboy fans. McCarthy's going to be gone. I mean, they're behind the Saints right now. They're tied with the Carolina Panthers.
Think about that. How bad does that look?
And you know what? Another one, and I guess we don't have the odds on this right now. I'm hoping that we can get it up over the next couple days because I've been very interested to see odds for the number 1 overall pick. That's something that I would like to get in on right now. And the way things look, 2-8 teams are Cleveland, Tennessee, Jacksonville's 2-9. So I guess they haven't had their bye week yet. So they've got the extra loss. The Raiders are 2-8 and the New York Giants are 2-8. And then the 3-7 teams are the Panthers, are the Cowboys, and there's 3-8 teams in New England and the New York Jets. That's another conversation that I've missed being able to talk to you about what's happened to the Jets.
General manager gone today. Everybody get rid of them all except Aaron Rodgers. So
hey, Aaron Rodgers winning percentage as a Jet, 275. Worse, significantly worse than both Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson.
Oh,
chew on that, Roger.
Tough luck. That's hilarious to me. I love it. Look, we're going to get to some National Hockey League stuff for sure. But just quickly, Huss, I mean, the lines this week in the NFL. Let's take an early look here. We got the Thursday nighter, Steelers Browns. Steelers are 3.5-point favorites on the road there. Chiefs.
How about that? Just quickly. An 8-2 team playing a 2-8 team, and the line's only 3.5. Yeah,
well, I think we had a Rod Z trend here. Here we are. Rod Z bet against Stefanski in home games after allowing 175 or more rushing yards last game. Stefanski's record as coach of the Cleveland Browns, 0-6 against the spread in that situation. So there you go. If you needed another reason to bet the Steelers, that would be the one. The Chiefs are 10.5-point favorites on the road in Carolina. Vikings 3-point favorites on the road in Chicago. Chicago obviously gave Green Bay a push this week. Texans heavy favorites at home, 8 points there. The Lions 7-point road favorites in Indy. The Dolphins are 7-point favorites at home against the Pats. The Bucks are 5-point road favorites in New York against the Giants. Commanders given 10 at home against the Cowboys. The Broncos 5.5 favorites on the road in Vegas. Packers 2.5 favorites at home against the Niners. Seattle by a point at home against Arizona. The Eagles are 2.5-point favorites in the Sunday nighter against the Rams. And then the Monday nighter Ravens and Chargers. And the Ravens are 3-point road favorites in that one. Anything jump off the page for you from a hop on it early perspective, Huss?
Well, yeah, there's a couple lines that I think we're going to be a little lower. One is the Patriots +7 at Miami. I got to tell you, I think this Drake May is a player. And
he looks like it, doesn't he?
He does. And, they had a tough game against the Rams. And, the defense is still somewhat suspect. They've got a lot of work to do. But they're getting better offensively. He's getting better and more confident each and every week. These divisional games often are a lot closer than you would think based on the record. So I wouldn't be surprised if when we do our best bets, we're talking about a Patriot number that is 6.5 or 6. And obviously that's significant when you're coming off a touchdown. And I'll say this, I know it's a short week, and I know we just saw them get pumped at home by the Texans. The Cowboys aren't at home this week. They're on the road. They're getting 10 points against Washington. And I think the shine has come off the Commanders a little bit as we've had a little bit of a reality check. That to me seems a huge number for a divisional game, even with the Cowboys where they're at right now. And I'll shout out to Rusty Shackelford in chat. Huss, I've been looking at the draft already for a few weeks. Well ahead of you as a Cowboys fan. Interested on what Rusty thinks their chances of it being a single-digit difference in this game. Other ones right off the bat, Denver's rolling. The Raiders are terrible right now. I wouldn't be surprised if that number actually goes up a little bit. And how about the Niners? Like we were just talking about where they're sitting. They're right now in last in the NFC West. Now, again, it's a 3-way tie for second. But based on their 1-3 divisional record, 3-4 in the conference, they're that team, and they're 2.5-point dogs to Green Bay at home. To Green Bay, who is at home in that game. Like that'll be another really, really interesting one to dive into. Arizona, Seattle, awesome game. Man, like we've got great games, especially this late slate. Packers, Niners, Cardinals, Seahawks. What a game by Geno Smith. Rams, Eagles, and the Rams, a home dog.
Yeah.
Even money at plus 275. And then you got the Ravens and the Chargers. And Harbaugh's got this Charger team playing tough. Justin Herbert has been absolutely balling out. Now, I mean, the Eagles, to their credit, have gotten their wins. Some of them not that impressive, but they've been winning their football games. That's a great one. But, man, this Ravens team is so Jekyll and Hyde. Like, we've seen them look like the best team in the NFL. And remember a few weeks ago, they're just sitting there at 6-4 right now. Or, sorry, 7-4. 1.5 games behind the Steelers, having already lost head-to-head to the Steelers, with losses on the docket to the Raiders. Like, to think that one of the Raiders' 2 wins this season is in Baltimore, hard to wrap your head around. And so that's a hell of a Monday nighter coming up. But, off the bat, a couple of the bigger numbers that I think we might see a bit of a change on. Dallas at +10. I think that probably ends up at like 8.5 or 9. And I think the Patriots will get some sharper money, if you will. What about you?
Well, it's interesting. Some of those bigger numbers, the Cowboys one, I do think the Commanders are going to win that game, but the 10 is a pretty big number. I'll be interested to see where that settles in. I do like what you said about Drake May and the Patriots. Although I think I saw a stat this week that the Dolphins have been scoring touchdowns since Tua came back at the highest rate in the league, like as far as touchdowns per drives. So he's got that offense going a little bit there again as well, but still a pretty big number. And yeah, I'm not 100% sure why the Ravens are 3-point favorites on the road against the Chargers. I think that's a pretty disrespectful number to the Chargers, who played some pretty good football. So I like the Chargers at 3. I don't think that line's going to be sitting there by the time we get to Monday night. Obviously, we'll have some time on Monday to dive a little bit deeper into that one. We do have to get to the National Hockey League. Lots to discuss there. I do want to get to an inbox text that came in. Waddy in Cloverdale. This came in a little bit earlier in the show, but I want to address it. Hey, guys, the real question is, how did Marshall Keith Nielsen take the loss? And this this is kicking his little balls after kicking his little balls over and over and over again because, he watches the Bombers win the first Grey Cup, and he was very neutral. Like, he didn't care then. And then the second time, he started to get sucked in a bit during the game, and he's like, okay, I'm on the Bombers. They win. Great. So, but that's when he kind of became a fan, right? Like, he got his Colaris jersey after that. He got his Bombers football after that. And now it's 3 straight Grey Cup losses when he's 7, 8, and 9 years old. And so I called a game, and then I had to pop over and introduce James Duthie on the PA or whatever. And then that was the end of my responsibility. So I hop on my phone and I look at my kids, like, we have cameras in their room, and it was about bedtime. So I clicked on Marshall's room camera, and he's sitting on his bed, and I popped on. I said, hey buddy, how you doing? And he's just like, oh, daddy. He goes, I knew it was over. He goes, I told mommy when Zach threw that first interception, I said, that's it. Like, it's not going to happen. And I said, okay. I said, so how did you react? He goes, well, Mummy says I might not be able to watch the Grey Cup anymore. I was like, really? So Tammy tells me, I FaceTime with Tam after the kids are in bed. And I said, so how bad was it? And she goes, well, when they fell behind, what was it, 24-16?
Yeah.
It was 24-16. He started to melt down. So she's like, if you need to go up to Mommy and Daddy's room and throw pillows around and yell and have a freak out, go ahead. So he goes upstairs and he's yelling and he's throwing pillows and he's freaking out. So he calms down. He comes back down. He gets there. He sits down, turns around, watches pick 6. Like, as he sits back down, the Priester pick 6. And Tam said he just melted down again, went back up to his room, lost it in his room. She goes in. He's like spread eagle on his bed. He's exhausted. Like, he can't take it anymore. So she sits down with him, and he goes, dang it. Like, they just can't. And Elizabeth's standing there, and like in our household for the kids, like, dang it's kind of a swear word. And he's like, he goes, Zach just freaking couldn't do it. And he says freaking, and not at the F word, but freaking. And Elizabeth is like, she starts crying because she's like, oh, Marshall's swearing. Oh no. So Tammy, like, it was just apparently just a full-blown 45-minute meltdown in the Nielson household after the game, buddy.
Hey, let me give him a message to Marshall. This is sort of your official true induction into the Bomber Nation.
Yeah.
You know what? You were young and you kind of got on when we won those 2 back-to-back Grey Cups, but trust me, my friend, before you were even a twinkle in Daddy's eye, we went 29 years without winning a Grey Cup, and we stunk for a long, long time. Now, it's been fun to be a Bomber fan, but like I said before, there's nothing like if you can go to the Grey Cup and your team wins, it is the best.
Yeah.
If you go to the Grey Cup and your team's not in it, it's amazing. You have so much fun. You know, you might have a bet on the game or something, but you really don't have any cheering. You go to the Grey Cup and you lose, and you do it 3 times in a row. It creates some real scar tissue. So, listen, he's learning early what it's like to be a sports fan. It's not all, and I mean, you think about the year that he's had, Oilers getting to game 7 of the
heartbreak
and now this. He probably thinks that the Detroit Lions are always amazing too. So
yeah, that's right.
It's perspective, but I love his passion. You should get them out to the Grey Cup next year.
I would say if Winnipeg's in it, maybe we'll bring him next year. And but man, would he be? I mean, he'll fit right in at Princess Auto Stadium if they lose. Like,
he might be at the Rum Hut for half the game. Mommy, Liz, I want to see you. Uncle Huss is taking me down to the Rum Hut.
Where was Marshall? Oh, he's on Huss's shoulders over at the Rum Hut, just living his best life. Like, God, I don't think you can put him on his shoulders, to be honest with you.
Just before we get into these hockey games, what the heck happened with the Oilers last night? I did not see it. I was traveling, but I got back on my phone when I got back, and following a number of ESTers and line shoppers. It didn't seem like people were too impressed with the effort that the team put up.
Well, I'm going to first of all give an anti shout out to Hernan Salas because I was I was listening to our pregame show. I was driving back from the airport, listening to our pregame show on iHeart, and Hernan, he convinced, like, it doesn't take a lot. I haven't been betting a ton lately because I've just been dead to the world, but doesn't take a lot to convince me. And at the end of the show, Hernan was like, I think the Oilers are going to win by 2 goals or more. And I was like, I'm riding with you. Oilers minus 110, minus 1.5 puck line. Let's do it. And then so Hernan, horrible advice. Anyway, they just kind of went through the motions. They went through the motions. I shut it off after about 6 minutes into the third period. I was like, screw it, I'm going to go to bed. I slept for 12 hours last night, by the way. 12 hours straight. It was incredible. It's the longest I've slept like in my entire life. But we're going to get into it on 2 guys and a goalie coming up today. But again, sick and tired of the Oilers getting into like grade A scoring positions and trying to pass the bloody puck. Makes no sense. Like, McDavid walks around somebody, gets to the edge of the crease and tries to feed it over to the far side. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? So they were very on the perimeter. They weren't physical. Montreal simply just wanted it more and got it. So, and they got to play again tonight. So that's an easy transition into tonight because they're in Ottawa tonight to take on the Ottawa Senators. Pickard played last night, so Skidder will go tonight. Jets are in action tonight. So let's quickly, here's your starting goalie so far, and then we'll get into it. Vasilevsky is listed as likely. Tristan Jarry for the Pens. Skinner versus Ullmark, Oilers and Sens. Hellebuck will start for the Jets. Big game against the Panthers. Bobrovsky's listed as unconfirmed. Philip Gustafson versus Jordan Binnington, Minnesota, St. Louis. Gibson's unconfirmed for the Ducks. Soderblom will start for the Blackhawks. Dustin Wolf will start for the Flames. Sorokin unconfirmed for the Islanders. And then the Canucks hosting the Rangers tonight. Lankinen and Shesterkin, both unconfirmed. One of my favorite things, actually, Huss, as I was MIA for 3 weeks, was watching the Jets become an absolute juggernaut. When I checked out, what were they, like 5-1, 6-1? Like, and it's just been, and I know they've dropped a couple here, but my goodness, what a wagon for a while there.
Yeah, I mean, it was the best start in NHL history. I mean, it's kind of crazy to say. And, you know, I mean, everyone knew that they were going to lose a couple games, but you know what it's like in these Canadian markets. You lose a couple games and all of a sudden everything that you did is thrown out the window. And now the team, this is a massive game tonight against Florida. I mean, it's the one visit to the Stanley Cup champions, but it's coming off of Saturday's game where the Jets got whooped pretty good. I mean, it was 5-0. And it got pretty nasty in the third period. I mean, Neil Pionk had that crazy hip check where he got, so don't really understand there's no penalty on it. I mean, I don't know why you got fined for clipping, if you will. I mean, but regardless, the one thing the Jets don't have a lot of that the Florida Panthers have plenty of is that nasty in their game. And they're going to need to be ready tonight for Florida. And it's such a weird part of their schedule too. Like, you know, there was a time they played sort of like outside of Edmonton and Minnesota in their first sort of 7-8 games. They played a lighter schedule. I mean, of teams that weren't in the playoffs, but they were taking care of business. But then they come back home when they beat Tampa and they beat Colorado and they whoop Dallas. And then they go to New York and play the Rangers and put forth a performance that honestly looked like the Globetrotters at times. It was such an awesome game. You knew that the other shoe was going to fall at some point, but it did in a pretty significant way, particularly in Florida, not so much in Tampa. But this is they're playing one home game in 10 and 2 in 14. So they basically came back, had a chance to kiss their wives and the kids, practice once, get out for a game, and then they're out for another 6. So, you know, right now the Jets are minus 118 and Florida's even money on this. Listen, obviously I'm going to be pulling for the Jets and I might make a wager based on my heart on this one, but I really don't know what to expect. It's going to be a great test for Winnipeg to see if they can come back and be a hell of a lot better. And it's just a unique situation that these games are back-to-back. In different spots. So that certainly is going to be one of the games of the night right now. I don't think I'll have it involved in any of the in any parlay or anything like that. What about the Oilers coming back? They get their number one. is this the sort of team that you think comes right back the next night with a much better performance? Or is this just sort of the up and down nature? Sometimes they'll win because they're just that good, but they're not dialed in right now. The guy that I see getting just taking so much heat is Bouchard on the blue line right now, Dusty.
Yeah, it's because he doesn't give a damn. Like I was chirping Bouchard before I got sick, and he's just got worse over the last. Well, Server Brett says I've been gone for 26 days. I didn't realize it was 26 days. But like Bouchard 2 games ago against the Leafs, a piss poor play right up the middle, and then the third goal in that game against the Leafs wasn't necessarily on him, but it gets chipped past him at the blue line, up the boards. Ekholm's on his horse trying to get back, and Bouchard sort of just gives up inside the blue line. He's like, well, I don't have to hustle back. It's just, he's just, to me, Bouchard. And last night, the team, I thought, was kind of like how Bouchard has been. They were going through the motions. Like, Bouchard has to have the least urgency in his game out of anybody in the entire National Hockey League, like on a consistent basis. Like he just, there's no urgency. And in the playoffs, he's played well because he cranks the urgency level up a bit. But right now, like, you cannot go through the motions. He's having a shitty season. It's as simple as that. Like, he just is. Offensively, he's not lighting the world on fire like you would have expected. This is probably, in some sort of weird twist, great news for the Oilers because there's no chance he's going to get $11 million with the way he's playing this season. But he deserves all of the heat that he's getting. Whether some people are like, well, Dusty, he's expected goals for when he's out there with McDavid. I don't care, man. Like, his effort level sucks the big one. So that's been a concern. With that being said, I'm still a little bit surprised you get the Oilers money line tonight at -108. I know it's back-to-backs, but it's not back-to-backs against the Rangers or the Panthers or the Jets or something. It is back-to-backs against Ottawa. So I think I like the Oilers at that value on the money line. Now it's moved. It's exactly -109 on both sides. So you know what I think happens tonight? I think tonight is oh man, they really need a win. So McDavid and Draisaitl will go get them a win tonight because the Sens are at that level that I think those two guys can do that against. So I'd probably load up on player props for McDavid and Draisaitl and the Oilers to win.
The Sens have been a team that has not been very streaky so far this year. They've had a lot of 2 losses and 2 wins. They've yet to lose 3 in a row in the season. They're coming off a 4-0 road loss to the Hurricanes. I will warn people, like a team like Ottawa that's trying to take that next step, like they look at this game. Okay,
as a prove-it spot. Yeah,
this is a big chance for them to show what they can do. I think the numbers are probably pretty correct, to be honest with you. I do see this as a pick 'em. There's a lot of reason to think that Edmonton can win. I guess the questions are.
Rod Z is pointing out that the Oilers are 0-3 on back-to-backs this year too. So yeah. Fair point. Like I still think they win.
I think I might be on the other side on this one on Ottawa, but I think I'm going to leave both of those games out of any potential parlays. The Canucks had a big time dud on Sunday night after the Grey Cup. There was a lot of angst around there, and man, did they play a lot. I guess they've had 4 home games in 6 days. They played the Islanders when we got there. They played, I guess that was Thursday night. And then they had Saturday and Sunday, and now they're at home again to the New York Rangers. And we just saw the Rangers last Tuesday at home at MSG against the Winnipeg Jets. And it was weird to see the Rangers. They were kind of cheating for offense. I don't know whether they felt that they had to do that. But since then, they've come back with 2 wins. Now, they beat the Sharks. Everyone beats the Sharks. Impressive win against the Kraken at 2-0. I think I like the Rangers on the road tonight.
Yeah, me too.
Against Vancouver, based on where both of those teams are. And then we've got an interesting one between the Islanders and the Calgary Flames. And Calgary had that really nice start to the season. Then they kind of got back to where I think we expected them to be. 4 losses in a row, back and forth. But the Islanders, as we've said, are like just one of the most mid teams in the league. They lost to the Kraken 3-2. They beat the Canucks. They beat them up pretty bad. And then they had lost to the Oilers on this road trip right now. I mean, what are you thinking about this Islanders-Calgary game right now that, as we speak about it, is pretty close to a pick 'em? Calgary, the slightest favorite at -112.
Yeah, that might be a stay away game for me personally. I mean, Dustin Wolf's going to start. Saw some pretty encouraging numbers on his last 10 starts if you go back to last season. But Sorokin on the other side might eliminate any sort of advantage you might want to play between the pipes there. So I don't know if I really like the Rangers. I'm with you 100% on the Rangers. The other game I was looking at, Huss, Tampa Bay's -159. Pittsburgh had lost 3 in a row. Then they beat the Sharks in a shootout.
They're brutal.
Yeah, like I really like Tampa. I think Tampa's won their last 2. I think I don't have the game. I had the game up, but I don't have it up.
Tristan Jarry's in. Jarry, who's been.
Yeah.
Listen, I love them. I just wish we had this conversation at the start of the show because it was -147 when we started. It's -159 now.
Like, so if we go Tampa and the Rangers on a money line, that's +201. So is there one more game that you like? Do you like the Flames?
You know, to be honest, I was kind of thinking the Islanders.
Yeah.
Like the Islanders, you know, are sort of back and forth. They just lost to the Kraken, but man, they played a good game against the Canucks. And I think they sort of try to salvage this. And like, I just don't think Calgary, like, to me, it's one of those games that could go either way. But, you know, with the, I think the Flames are a team that, you know, can have a great game more like every now and then, but they're not a team that is probably more talented than most. Now, is Barzal back?
I just got a Rod Z trend. I don't know if Barzal's back, but Rod Z says, bet on the Islanders on the money line off a road loss. They're 5-0 in 2025 in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of just going at their trends back and forth. That's sort of why I'm looking. If Rod Z's backing us on such a tight one, it's a slight dog. It's gone down a little bit.
And no Barzal in the lineup, at least according to Daily Faceoff. So,
yeah, no, I'm looking at it right now. But I'll tell you what, the Rangers, Islanders, and Lightning gets us to +492.
Yeah, no, that's a good one. I like it. Good little parlay to lock in here. Fun to get through the lock shop. Hush, you got Winnipeg Sports Talk coming up. What's coming up right away, buddy?
A little bit more autopsy on the Bombers in the Grey Cup, but the focus is going to be on the Jets and Panthers tonight down at Canada Life Center.
Excellent, buddy. I will chat with you tomorrow, my man.
Great to see you, man.
2 guys and a goalie coming up here on Edmonton Sports Talk. Stick around for that.